welcome to Wouldn't You Love to Know, a conversation with Steve Bell about his brand new album, Wouldn't You Love to Know? I'm Amber Anderson, and this good-looking fella sitting a good physical distance away from me is Steve Bell. Hey, buddy.
We measured.
We did measure, yes.
Yes. We made sure they were okay.
Yeah. Well, this is wonderful and strange to be this far apart, but
Yeah.
wonderful to be able to talk about this new album.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so over this next hour, we plan to basically walk people through about the first half of Wouldn't You Love to Know, and talk about the songs and how they came into being, and what went behind them, and basically all the good stuff people would normally get if they were able to see you in concert.
Right.
Which, of course, they can't do right now.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And the second hour will be the second half.
Exactly. So we are right here in Signpost Studios. This is where the magic happens. Tell us about this space before we get into the album.
Well, I have in Winnipeg with my business partner and manager, Dave Zaglinski, we have a recording studio that we've been operating out of for years and years and years. And then last year, COVID hit and we had to get off the road and we didn't know what to do with our time and our resources. And this space actually, this used to be a kind of warehouse space for all the CDs that people used to buy.
What are CDs?
Yeah, I know. That's the older people will know what that means. And we realized we didn't really need the space anymore. But we did need to sort of pivot hard and learn how to do our work in a different medium. And so we got some advice from some friends, and we hired a set designer, and they came in and they created this space for us so we could do video work. And the idea behind this too, we wanted to be a little bit Winnipeggy. And if anybody's from Winnipeg, they'll know this is sort of like the central district loft area of Winnipeg looks very much like this. All these old buildings, and people come in and they sandblast the brick and they create loft spaces. And so we wanted it to sort of, anybody from Winnipeg will kind of know.
It's a nice homage to like the Exchange District in Winnipeg for sure. Yeah. So I was super excited when I heard about the new album coming out. First of all, we just needed some wonderful Steve Bell music during this time, but also it had been about 4 years since you'd put out a new album.
It's the longest stretch of time between albums in 30 years. Yeah.
So you're just slacking off, or what was the deal there?
Well, actually, and it's not that I didn't do output. I wrote a series of books called Pilgrim Year, which is a 7-booklet series of reflections on the tradition of the Christian calendar year. And so that's what I was doing with that time. I was still doing concerts. And then so it took a couple of years to get that together. We had a couple of years to sort of get it out and promote it, and then it was time for a new album.
Now, I love the package. I love that you've got like a book that goes along with this and everything. It is absolutely beautiful. But one of the first things you say in this book is to at least once listen to the album from beginning to end as it's presented in the album. Why is that important that everybody does that at least once?
Well, I mean, I can't make you experience my art the way I intend it to be experienced, right? That's the thing about, the new digital platforms and stuff, is that it's no longer in my control for you to experience it as I put it together. But I hope, if you're a Steve Bell fan, that you will take into consideration that I chose the songs and the order and the packaging, because the songs are individual, yes, but there's also an arc to the album. And for those of us that grew up with albums, it's an art. The album itself is an art form. How do I give you an experience, right? And I'd like you to have the experience that I worked for. And so, yes, each song stands on its own, but they're put together in a way that I hope gives you a certain kind of an experience that you can't have unless you actually listen to it in a sitting, in the order that I intended it to be. And so I'm still an album guy. I like that art form, and I'm kind of sad that it's being lost.
Well, I do like that you did also release this on vinyl.
Yes.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Yeah, vinyl is great. Vinyl is an interesting thing. And it's audiophiles might say they like it better or not. I mean, that's whatever. But what's interesting about vinyl is that it's delicate, it's vulnerable. If you have my album on your phone and someone runs over your phone, it's all still there, right? You can have it transferred or whatever.
Yeah.
Vinyl's different. You put it on your record player and you drop that needle, and if you're in a hurry, you scratch the record. it's precious. And there's something about the act of vinyl, of putting it on and being careful, and you get out your little brush and get the dust off, because as soon as you hear that crackle, it's never going away, right? Nope. And so the actual way we approach music with vinyl is different because it's precious. And so I think it actually prepares you for what's coming.
Yes.
You have to be careful with it, because once this is wrecked, it's wrecked. You have to go buy another one.
Well, and I love what we're going to do over the next hour, because that's kind of how we're going to be listening to this album is if we were putting the needle on and sitting down and letting it run through song by song. Now, this particular album is called Wouldn't You Love to Know? That's the title track. I love when I first heard that this was the name of the album and of the first song, because there was sort of a cheekiness to it and a cleverness to it, because I think when it came out, there's all kinds of things I would love to know, not only about Steve Bell, but about what the heck is going on in the world right now.
Right.
So the timing of it, but also the title of it. Why was it important to you to have a title that sort of asked a question?
Well, a couple things. One, it actually is good marketing, right? When I first realized this is going to be the album title, I thought, oh, that's perfect, because you can play with it. But the actual song itself stems from I stumbled across an online written out sermon by N.T. Wright called "Wouldn't You Love to Know." Now, I'm an N.T. Wright fan. He's an English theologian. I think he's brilliant, and I read his books, and I just was checking out what's out there, what is he talking about now. And I saw this title, Wouldn't You Love to Know? And the first thing I thought is, yes. I don't know what you're selling, but I'm interested. I'm in. I want to know. I want to know. So what are you... And so the whole essay or the talk that he gives is about how do we actually come to know something? How do you know the truth or the essence of something? And in our modern Enlightenment scientific world, we take it apart, we analyze the parts, and we say, we know it now. And he says, not yes and no. You know data. You know facts, you don't know essence, you don't know truth. And that truth is greater than data. Truth is greater than facts. If you want to know data and facts, there's a scientific method, you can do that. If you want to know meaning, that's different. And he says this, in that realm, you can't know what you don't first love. You must love something in order to know it. I've come to know my wife, Nancy, because I've committed to a lifetime of loving her. Love precedes knowledge. And so I remember, reading this, and I'm kind of blown away by this thought. And then at the end of his little essay, he says, so if it's true that love precedes knowledge, if you have to love something in order to know it, then wouldn't you love to know? Perfect. And I went, a song. And I thought, absolutely perfect, right? Yeah. Because you do, in a sense, in our modern world, we almost have to kill something in order to know it, right? If you want to know a frog, you take it out of the pond, you dissect it, you measure parts, you analyze the systems and the structures and the biology to the skeleton, all that kind of stuff, and then at the end you can say, well, we know a frog. No, you don't. You know a dead frog. If you want to know a living frog, you have to get a stool, you have to go by a pond, you have to be very, very quiet for a very, very long time in order to know anything about a frog. And if you don't love it, you're not going to put the time in.
True. So true.
Right? It's your passion to want to know and love that frog. It's the love that's going to put you there in that disposition where you can receive and come to know the truth of frogginess. So there you go.
Well, we'll talk more about the putting together of the song, but first let's hear the song. This is Wouldn't You Love to Know, Steve Bell's the title track from his latest CD.
If you have to love the truth just to know if it is true, wouldn't you love to know? If the essence of a thing begs to hear your tender wooing, wouldn't you love to know? If you can't know a part without delighting in the whole, wouldn't you love to know? If never know a kiss without first cherishing the soul. Wouldn't you love to know. To know as you are known, simply love as you are loved. Gently turn this fertile loam to unearth the fragrance of the lover's drug. From the far cloud hidden star to the solitary bug, wouldn't you love to know? Frankenstein and Faust are yet the rage, unspeakable the severing damage done. Yet on the wind the distant sound of drum, and the sweetness of the sage still might come a kinder age. See the wonder-stricken child, hear the elders wise in song. Wouldn't you love to know? Wouldn't you love to know? Wouldn't you love to know?
Well, that was Wouldn't You Love to Know? That's the title track off of Steve Bell's new album. And we're talking with Steve Bell today about the new album. And I just love that song. I love what you did with the instrumentation there. There was a real homage to some bluegrass in there.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
I was very influenced by "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou."
Me too. I love that album.
I love that.
Oh,
So
my.
anytime I get a chance, and I was a huge T-Bone Burnett fan,
Nice.
who's a producer of that music. I fell in love with bluegrass or Americana music one time when I heard an old Emmylou Harris album, a bluegrass album of gospel songs.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
I remember thinking, my mind went crazy, like, what is that? And so I've been a fan of the genre, and of course I didn't grow up in it. So, but anytime I can get close to it with my own music, I'm always happy.
Well, and it was just, it's a very tasty, part of that song. And even when you get into some of the choruses, there's almost like a knee slap moment there where you can really get into it. And again, I love that music too. So I was like, oh, someone else who loves it as much as I do.
It's very rootsy. It's very porchy. It's the kind of thing you might see somebody playing on a porch with a bunch of people singing. I mean, that's the feel of it, right? It feels very communal.
Yeah, and it's an interesting dichotomy between that instrumentation and that feel and what you're actually singing about in the words. Right. So I love that, how it's very challenging.
Thank you.
And it is a piece of art, that song. Actually, the whole album is a piece of art.
Thank you.
And before we get to the next song, I do want to talk about the artwork.
Oh yeah,
that's on the album and in the book, because this is an experience. This isn't just a CD. You've got a whole tapestry going on: music, written word, and imagery. I know that was intentional, but tell us about the imagery and how that came about.
Well, I'll just grab it here.
There you go.
Yeah, well, for one, we've started working several years ago with a designer named Roberta Hansen, Roberta Landreth now. She's married to Dave Landreth. And Dave and Joey Landreth are Dave and Joey of the Brothers Landreth.
Okay.
Right? So magnificent musicians. She is a brilliant designer. She's an intuitive. She kind of knows the principles of design, but she's an artist in her own right. And it's really interesting with this one. I sort of gave her the songs and the lyrics. And I said, I'm thinking of doing a booklet, not just, of credits, but maybe writing some reflections. And how would we do that? And because each then chapter would need a design element that's related to the cover and all that kind of stuff. That's about all I said to her.
Wow.
And this is what came back.
Incredible. And each song has its own image, and it's
brilliant. So Wouldn't You Love to Know? And there's a keyhole, right, for you to know the mystery. Like it's behind, right? So she grabbed that right away. And then she grabbed sky and ocean, things above and things below. She grabbed images from things that are above, flowers and hands and stars, and things that are below, shovels and anchors, and how these things work together, and that truth is something that there's surface and there's subterranean, there's mystery, there's revelation. It's all part of that. And so she built those themes all the way through. It's very good.
It's very good. Well, it's almost like a devotional in a sense. Like I would highly recommend, if you're going through the album and listening to it, in order, to not only just read the words that you have written, but also spend time looking at the imagery that accompanies each song. Because I found for the next song, In Praise of Decay, the image that went with it, again, was almost devotional in retrospect to look at.
Yep. And the other thing to think about with the book too is that when it's just an interesting thing to comment on. All the music was written pre-COVID.
Yeah. Which you would not think when you listen to the album.
No. But the book was written post-COVID, right? So that's an interesting thing. And so in writing the book to go with the songs became new to me. Because when I wrote them, nobody had ever heard of COVID. Nobody imagined a worldwide lockdown and all the anxiety that would come from that. But when I went to write that, this was exactly when it was happening, last March. And so the songs became new. They took on the aroma of the zeitgeist of the time. And so in a sense, the book is about me in some way rediscovering the songs in this new time.
Yeah. In Praise of Decay would be one of those songs for sure, because certainly it meant something when you wrote it, but it means something completely different now.
Right.
And what's interesting I find about that particular song is that when you listen to it, it's very counterintuitive. In Praise of Decay.
Right.
Yeah. And yet it's hopeful.
Yeah. Okay, but this is the genius of Malcolm Guite.
Yes.
Who the lyric is my adaptation of a poem that he wrote, and a reflection that he wrote for the poem. So that my lyric is a bit of both. It's not trying to sort of reproduce his poem. It's borrowing from it.
Right.
But he was on a walk with his dog, and in the forest. This is in England. He's an English poet. He's a friend of mine. And in the mottled leaves, he saw a plastic bag, right? And so amongst these rotting things that are going to die and decay and smell moldy and all that kind of stuff, new life is going to spring, right? That becomes the fertile, fecund soil. The fact that something dies and rots makes new life possible. That plastic bag's not gonna. The thing that is vulnerable to decay and death actually means new life is going to happen. The thing that is invulnerable to decay and death is going to actually interrupt the possibilities of life, right? And so then he writes this whole thing in praise of decay. Perhaps it's not so bad if things decay. Now, I wrote this also when my dad was dying, right? So there's all that kind of, there's that going in there. I've got environmental concerns.
Sure.
All that is packaged into this whole thing. But if you're hearing the song, you also have to know that I was having to deal with the fact that my dad's body is going to be in the earth soon and is going to do exactly that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, with all of that in mind, let's listen to Steve Bell's In Praise of Decay.
There were older ways of living, much wiser than the ways we've known. Kinder and forgiving of the limits we're inclined to loathe. Native to this land that God has given us to grow, the seeds of love, the shoot of faith, the tree of hope. In the spiral of of our sinning in the manufactured grim disgrace of betraying our beginnings with viral acts of greed and waste. Planted in the midst of these bewildering displays lies a garden tended by a lover's grace. Perhaps it's not so bad that things decay, that ocean breakers ebb and flow away, that light ascends and settles at the ending of the day, that beating hearts can stop and start again. There's a reverence unfolding from the secrets of the lowly and least, and the arts of better knowing, of letting go and planting seeds. Blessed are the ones who harrow wisdom from the past, to save us from these dreadful things that last. Perhaps it's not so bad that things decay, that ocean breakers ebb and flow away, that light ascends and settles at the ending of the day, that beating hearts can stop and start again. Perhaps it's not so bad that things decay, that ocean breakers ebb and flow away, that light ascends and settles at the ending of the day, that beating hearts can stop and start again.
So that was Steve Bell's In Praise of Decay off of his Wouldn't You Love to Know album. And we're in conversation with Steve Bell about the album. And that's one of the songs, Steve, that kind of stopped me in my tracks when I was listening to it. And I went back and I reread that first verse. There are older ways of living, much wiser than the ways we know, kinder and forgiving of the limits we're inclined to loathe. I know that we have said that this was written before COVID, but what a word for now.
Yes. You know what? The whole modern project is a rebellion against our limitedness, against finitude.
Yes.
You know, we want to be the superhuman. We want to have mastery over creation. We want to have mastery over our own bodies. We want to have mastery over each other.
And you know that comes from fear too, right? Because we don't want to we don't want to face the fact that we end.
Yep. But Malcolm's poem reminds us by looking at, but what's the ugly thing in the forest? The thing that won't die or the thing that will die? Right? The thing that won't die is the problem. And so coming up against, again, limitations is kind of, it's built into the fabric of the cosmos. And there's a way that, and now that my dad has passed away, for example, and he's literally and metaphorically decayed,
yes.
Those memories are becoming more and more fecund all the time. And when people say, you know, but they still live on, you know, you sort of think, well, that's what you say to people to comfort, you know, them, when the truth is they don't.
Right.
The truth is they do. And they in fact, their lives become more and more meaningful. And I'm starting to now mind things about my dad and his life and in his investment in me and that I didn't have before. So I miss him.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
yeah.
and I'd rather he didn't die, but his life is not over.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's what this song sort of encourages us to embrace and maybe even celebrate.
Yep.
And again, it does sound a little disconcerting at first, the hopefulness of the song when you look at the words, but there is hope in that.
Of course.
Yeah.
So Krista Tippett, I just she's a podcaster, but I actually was listening to her this morning, and she's talking to this old Jewish rabbi, and they're talking about lamentation. And she says really basically the first step of lamentation is letting the truth be. Yes, you're going to die. Yes, COVID's going to shut us down. That just let's just sit with that fact. We can't control that.
Yeah. So
you let the truth be the truth. And then you sit with expectation, if God is good, and I think God is good, that something new is coming. It's interesting, the word apocalypse. We live in apocalyptic times. And apocalypse doesn't mean an ending, done, like Mad Max. It's over. It's brutal. It's awful. The apocalypse really actually means the ending of one thing so that the new thing can happen. Apocalypse always means there's hope on the horizon, even if now sucks. Right? And we are in an apocalyptic time. We don't know what's going to be on the other side of COVID. We don't know what's going to come on the other side of the sort of the last presidency of the United States, which just consumed all of us in one way or another.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Yes. But it's an apocalypse, and something is revealed about that. But the hope is, and this bears out through all of history, is something new is coming. So let's get ready for that too.
Yeah. And I think the next song in the album, I love the fact that this is the next song in the album, God Bless the Poor, because it's sort of the natural extension of if you're able to embrace the decay, then you're able to maybe see the world, the living world, slightly different. Exactly. And you quote Psalm 98:6 at the beginning of the chapter: sing praises to the Lord with stringed instrument and with the sound of melody and with the sound of the horn. And I was struck again by how many times in the Bible we are called to play an instrument or sing or make a joyful noise or dance.
Yeah.
I mean, what a gift music is.
Oh, it absolutely is.
It's a gift.
Well, again, okay, I'm going to go back to this podcast I heard this morning. So this rabbi, he's talking to Krista Tippett, and he tells her that he was in a conference call with a bunch of colleagues that went sour at the last minute.
Oh, no.
And they had some agenda there. I don't know, there's some kind of a fellowship or whatever, but somebody brought up politics and Capitol riot on January 6th. And all
no
that kind
good's
of stuff.
going to come from that.
And quickly, he said this fellowship broke down from people that had different opinions, and it ended up starting to get a little toxic, and he didn't know how to end. All of a sudden, this meeting is going to end in 5 minutes. And he doesn't know what to do. How do we wrap this up in a good way? And he says, he's quiet, and he says, let's sing. And they picked a melody that they all know, and they sang it, and it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? In a time of cacophony and a time of chaos and friction.
Yes.
That they ended not resolving it, but they ended in singing, and everybody having the same melody and everybody having the same song, and there was healing and hope in it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it doesn't say that we have to sing beautifully or that it has to be in tune.
Nope.
Make a joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise.
But we are designed to make music. God, our Creator, created us to make music and to receive music for no other purpose than for us to commune with Him and with each other. Because there's really no other purpose for music.
Right.
Like, what's the point?
Right. It doesn't solve anything really. And he did, like in that story, the singing didn't solve the disputes, but it solved the distance. It solved the separation. If you think about the world being just this extravagant diversity, between sky and ocean, between birds of the air and fish of the sea, hot and cold. Not only is there this thing called a flower, there's millions of kinds of flowers, and there's millions of each one of those, like the diversity and multitude. But yet at the end of the Christian tradition and the Jewish tradition and the Islamic tradition all affirm that there's a oneness at the base of that.
Yeah.
Right. So part of what music does is helps remind us at the end of the day, we can still join our voice and sing the same melody. And something which is profoundly true gets exposed when we do that.
And I think that that's why people are so passionate about your music, because your music is definitely that music that brings us together and helps us to get to that place.
Oh, good.
At least it has been for me for decades. So.
Well, thank you.
But it helps us get to that place where we
Right.
remember why we're created, or that we were created.
Yeah.
In whatever tradition you might believe, it brings you back to that oneness of with your creator, which is important.
That ground of being.
Yes, yes.
From which all things come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the next song on the album, God Bless the Poor, you didn't write this particular song.
No. And
Why did you include it on the album?
Well, this is funny because this was going to
important?
be my first album where every song was written by Steve Bell. At least I had a part in it. Because every album has got 2 or 3 or 4 songs written by other people.
Sure.
And I was ready, like, wow, like after all these years,
You were so close.
21 albums, and then I heard this song, and it was Brian McLaren, the author. Some of you know him. People listening. I just heard this song at a friend of mine's concert last year, Glenn Soderholm, and it just blew me away. And I thought, I gotta sing that song. And I thought it was Glenn's. And then I phoned him up and I said, can I do your song? He says, well, yeah, but that's not mine. It's Brian McLaren's. And so I know Brian. And so I said, well, can I do your song, buddy? He said, sure. So it just seemed to fit. It seemed to be the right thing for the album. And I had to wrestle with it because it meant having to give up this idea that I'd finally have an album of only Steve Bell songs. But once I got over that, it just fits.
Yes.
The arc, the narrative, the larger narrative of the album.
Well, we'll talk more about that, but first let's hear God Bless the Poor.
God bless the poor, bless them with the treasure that the rest take for granted. Bless them with true prosperity, to have all that they need, enough and then some more to share, and wisdom to enjoy the priceless blessings flowing everywhere for free. God bless the rich, bless them with the treasure that their money cannot buy. Bless them with generosity, to realize we can only save the things we give away. The only wealth worth having is the joy of doing right and good for free. God bless the wounded, the migrant and the refugee who seek just to survive. Bless them with hospitality, to keep their hope alive. Just one more day through strangers who in kindness open hands and doors and borders until all are safe and free. God bless us all, to never waste a heartbeat or a breath or day or night. Bless us with gratitude, to savor every taste, the gift of every present moment, and dance with all our strength within your rhythm and your music, to be free. To be free.
So that was God Bless the Poor off Steve Bell's newest album, Wouldn't You Love to Know? And a beautiful song. We mentioned beforehand that it's not one that you wrote, but I'm so glad you included it on the album, especially, again, in the now, in the moment that we're living in now. When I read God Bless the Poor, bless them with the treasure that the rest take for granted. You know, bless them with the true prosperity to have all that they need. Even in times of COVID, there's still so much comfort that most of us take for granted. We have even become more aware of the disparity between the have and the have not.
Yeah, boy, that has been exposed, hasn't it?
It really has.
And of course, once you know, you're responsible for what you know.
Yes.
And so, I mean, this is again, it's apocalyptic in the sense of its opportunity. We have just been robbed of the life we knew. So we have a chance to recreate something new.
Well, it's what I found really interesting, again, just really looking at the words of this song and also the feel of the song, because it also talks about God bless the rich, because the rich need to know that what they have is not forever.
Right.
But it was interesting in today's context. We keep hearing people saying, "Oh, we're all in the same boat."
Right.
But we're not.
We're not.
We're all in the same storm.
Right,
but we're all in different boats.
That's a very good. Thank you for that. I love that. That's a song. That sings.
Well, let me know how that goes.
Preachers will say that preaches. Songwriters will say that sings.
We are in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And I love how that song just sort of inadvertently references that. At least that's what it said to me.
Well, actually, one of the reasons that the song caught me was not the first verse, God bless the poor. We've all heard that. Was God bless the rich.
Yeah.
And because we don't hear that, because the rich are they're the problem, right? Like, and so if you're like me and you're lean a bit left and you hang out with lefty people, and the man is the problem, or the corporation is the problem, or the 2%, they're really the problem. And the way this song kind of goes through is God bless the poor, and it says God bless the rich, and that's got a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
And then God bless the refugee and all that. So it goes to that. Well, we're more familiar with that. But then the end it says God bless us all. We're all really, we're all in the same storm. But you're right, we're not in the same boat.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Bible is very clear on how we are to treat the refugee and how we are to treat the poor and how we are to treat, the other. And yet that's not what we're seeing today.
Right. And how do we treat our own prosperity?
Yes.
What do we do with that?
Yes.
I don't need to be embarrassed by it. The question is, I'm to steward it in a way that reflects God's character and God's nature and God's concern and God's passion. It's a gift to me to steward after in the image of God.
Gorgeous song. I'm glad you included it.
Thank you. Me too. Yeah.
So moving on to the next song on the album, which is The Strange Blessing of Bearing.
Okay.
Now, I have to admit, of all the songs on this album, this was the song that was most mystifying to me. And perhaps it's because I have not had children. I have not bore a child.
Right.
So some of the imagery was a little bit like I was trying to get there. I had to sort of strive to get there. It was a bit of a mystery. But after reading what you wrote in the book and knowing the context of the song, then it just shook me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I think this is probably my favorite song of the album, and it might be my favorite Steve Bell song.
Wow.
It was a gift song. It came to me. I wasn't looking for it. It wasn't like I was thinking about this. And I was at I was taking a course. I was helping lead a course at Regent College a couple summers ago. And while I was there, I did this with Bruce Hindmarsh on prayer. But while I was there, I was reading a book of sermons by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And in that book, now this is the guy that sort of gave his life in Nazi Germany. He's the guy that encouraged the church not to be co-opted by the state. And there was a real split in the church. We just see this in America too. Does the church support the state, or is the state the problem? All that kind of stuff. And so he really encouraged the church to not support state agenda, to not support nationalism. And that the gospel actually takes us away from that, not the other way around. And he died for it. And he bore that. But he wrote about this strange blessing of bearing that gifts come from. And so I'm reading this and it struck me. I kind of got it. we've had children. I've watched my wife bear children, and the gift that is, and the cost to her, so that we could have this joy not only of our own children, but the cost to her that we can have grandchildren now. That she paid for that.
Yeah.
She paid for that. And then you look at the whole narrative of Jesus. And in our day and age, we're uncomfortable with this kind of language. The ancients weren't. That there's an image of some images of Jesus on the cross, and there's a distended belly, and you see this in some of the more ancient imagery of Jesus. That's a baby bump. That Jesus is bearing new life.
Yeah.
You can look at it as being, okay, he's emaciated. Maybe has to do with the physicality of hanging on a cross. No, it's a baby bump.
Wow.
And that there's a maternal sort of nature of God. Well, obviously,
yes,
right.
Yes.
But there's that God not only bears us, but it costs God to bear us, right? And we've been made in the image of God, and so not only in how in God's bearing, this blessing comes, but then we're called, in a sense, to take up the same thing for the sake of the world.
And it's not pretty, and it's messy, and it's painful.
Yep.
And you talked about this song sort of ambushing you,
Yep.
And sort of demanding to be written.
Yep.
And it's interesting because you said the other song that happened that way was "This Is Love."
Yes.
Now, if
From an old album.
exactly. Yeah. Now, if the blessing of bearing was a mystery to me, "This Is Love" is one that just hit me instantly, and every time I hear it, I'm back in Israel when I got to go there and finally made the connection of the actual sacrifice that Jesus made.
Right.
When I finally got that, I was on the ground.
Right.
And I couldn't get up.
Right.
And every time I hear that song, that's where it takes me. So it's interesting that both of those songs ambushed you the same way.
Yeah. The thing about "This Is Love" is it's using familiar metaphor to you. So you could probably access it quicker.
Yes.
Right? Where "Strange Blessing" is really asking you to think of God as maternal.
Yes.
And so therefore it's harder to and the suffering of Christ or God is maternal suffering. And then the calling is for us to participate in that. I'm not called, boy, this is a longer conversation that we're not going to get into. We, in a paternalistic society, we think of the Christian hero as Braveheart. Right? The Christian hero is not Braveheart. The Christian hero is Mary.
Yes.
Right? The proper heroism of Christianity is the one that suffers so that others might live, that gives their life so that others might live, doesn't take a life so that others might live. It's not the violence of Braveheart. It's the gift of Mary, of maternity. I'm not called to be a strong warrior. I'm called to be a suffering mother. And boy, you start to let that imagery work on you. That'll mess you up for a while, especially if you're a guy.
Yeah.
Remember, these are metaphors.
Right.
So take a pill. It's
yeah,
fine.
it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah. But really important metaphors. And for a society that's really elevated the sort of the male narrative, we really lose, I think, some of the deepest qualities of the revelation of who God is.
What a journey one song can take you on. Let's listen to "The Strange Blessing of Bearing."
The peace of God is with the patient ones, bearing up under affliction. For the joy that love has promised us, the waves of agony wash over us. May we know what mothers know, the strange blessing of bearing. Becomes a lover, oriented towards the other, sufferings gladly enduring, for the sake of another's flourishing. May we know what martyrs know, the beautiful blessing of bearing. God, we pray that in the days to come, ever keep before our longing the mystery of your bleeding Son, through the night into the dawning, into the dawning, into the dawning. Love and wound in God's creation fortifies the soul's elation. Hearts on fire to love attending, tribulations notwithstanding. May we know what Jesus knows, the glorious blessing of bearing.
That was The Strange Blessing of Bearing off of Steve Bell's brand new album. I guess it's not brand new, but it's still new to us. Wouldn't you love to know? And we're in conversation with Steve Bell. And Steve, if that particular song isn't another example of the gift of music, I don't know what is. I mean, to be able to sing about and communicate a message like that through music. I don't know how else you would actually be effectively able to communicate that.
No, you can't. And I mean, there's different kinds of language for different purposes. And we have become people that want to master our universe. And so we're highly versed in technical language. Because with technical language, you can be precise and you can control outcomes and all that kind of stuff. But with these deeper truths, you can't. They're more woomy.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? They're mysterious and they're dark, and it's a little frightening to go there. And so you need the melody or the language of melody and poetry. That stuff that's ambiguous a little bit, that doesn't nail everything down. That's open to revelation. That's open to apocalypse. So that something new can happen. And so I think the best songs have that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Whether mine or I think my better songs have that element to it. Yeah.
And certainly, the last song that we're going to look at in this part of the program, because we're only tackling half of the album at a time, because we want to give each song its due. But certainly, this song is an example of that in Memoriam, and of course, probably the most personal song on the album, and probably one of your most personal songs ever.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I can say that if the last song was a bit of a mystery to me, this song, the first time I heard it, which was fortunately for me, I was able to hear you sing it live a couple of times before I heard it on the album.
Yeah.
So the first time I heard you sing this live, I felt like I was standing right next to you with my hand on the middle of your back, just weeping with you, because I knew it. I had experienced it.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who's experienced the loss of a parent has experienced it.
Yeah. And you knew my dad too.
And I knew your dad. Yeah. So actually, I think one of the first times I heard you sing it was at the Centennial Concert Hall. And the last time I had been at the Centennial Concert Hall was, I think, to see one of your concerts as well. And the previous time, your dad was sitting right behind me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
The proud papa.
And at that one, he stood up and gave a blessing at the end.
Yes,
blessing
he did.
To everybody. Yeah.
Yes, and it was beautiful. So, but I was right there every word of it. But I mean, I understand that you actually didn't plan to write a song about your dad.
No, I actually thought that I would actually deliberately not, because it felt to me, boy, it's still raw.
It is. Yes, I can tell you this. It's been 6 years, just over 6 years since my mom, and 5.5 since my dad.
Right.
Get in it for the long haul, my friend.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But you know what? The beauty of the tears is that you were loved.
Yeah. The pain
Mourning is beautiful.
The pain is because something good happened, not because something bad happened. Otherwise, yay,
it wouldn't hurt. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. So there's no question that this is the pain that I have about my dad's loss is because something good happened. And I don't want to paint him to be some saint. He wasn't a saint. He was a very flawed guy in many, many ways, but he was a good man, and he was a wise man. And I didn't really want to write a song because the thing to me about writing a song was that I don't want to reduce my dad to a song. I sort of thought there's no way I could write a song about my dad that didn't, by definition, lie. Right? Because you can't tell the whole story.
Right, it just wouldn't be enough.
Yeah. And of course, well then, if you can't write a song about your dad, then you certainly can't write one about God. So I mean, the logic is a little flawed, but at the end, I was really planning not to. And then I was in Calgary. I was getting a medical procedure. I've got some issues, and I had my hand all bandaged up because I have some things going on. And I was in this hotel, and it was an evening, and I was going to fly home the next day, and I was looking over the mountains to the east, and the sun was setting, and a bottle of wine beside me, and I'm just kind of thinking about things, and I was thinking about my dad, and how around his bed, I met some of his friends. I got reacquainted with my nieces who I'd kind of lost contact with, and other people, and some good things happened around his deathbed and his dying. And this line came to me: "Fresh tenderness is burgeoned with the dying of my dad." And I love him all the more for it. Yeah. There was a gift there. Yeah. And I knew a song was coming. Well, no, I didn't immediately. I just wrote it in my phone, put the phone down, and went back to just sort of, pondering life. And then half an hour later, another line came, and every half hour, a line came. All of a sudden, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I realized I've written the song I said I wouldn't write.
Yeah, and music is beautiful for getting us through some of those times too, right? I know for me with my parents, it's still a song that comes on the radio, where I will pull over and just weep and talk to my mom.
A friend of mine, Chris Vi, who's passed away, he was a young man and newly married with a new child on the way. He started having some physical issues, went to the doctor, and was told that he had Lou Gehrig's disease, and he was going to die. And he was not only going to die, he's going to die. It's going to be long and slow and really, really miserable, right? So that's what a 35-year-old wants to hear with a new child on the way and all that. And he got into the car with his wife coming out of the meeting with the doctor, and they're staggered. They just don't know what to do, and they're just sort of sitting there in silence trying to absorb this. And you turned on the radio, and it was Kurt Cobain, "Smells Like Teen Spirit," that agony, that primal cry. There was nothing Christian about it. It wasn't. And he said what he needed at that time was that. He didn't need Steve Bell singing some peaceful, lovely thing. He needed a primal cry of agony, and the song gave him that. And I've never forgot that. But in as much that music can be that for the listener, how much more so can music be that for the musician, for you? I mean, we, as the listener and as someone who loves music, and as someone who loves my parents, and I listen to that song and I get so much from it. Yeah. But how much more for you being able to write it? Well, I think and
experience it from that way, and to be able to sing it, and to be able to share your dad with so many other people who didn't know him.
Right. And my songs, I mean, in particular, are all quite personal. I mean, there's different ways of thinking about songwriting. There's songwriting is almost like making a widget or a wheelbarrow. You're making a product to sell to the public. So what does the public need? They need a wheelbarrow. We're going to put a wheel here. We're going to all that kind of stuff, and we put it out there, and it works. What does the public need? They need a happy song. They need a fun song. They need a love song. So let's get a group of people together, and we'll make that widget for them, and then we'll commodify it, and that's really, really valid. I've never been good at that. Like, my songs are all personal therapy. My songs are my journal. My songs are the way I pray. My songs don't talk about how I pray. They are my prayer. Right? They don't talk about my spirituality. They are my spirituality. And so in that sense, it's very, very personal. And so the song isn't the song itself is my relationship with my father.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
It's not objectifying it. It is what it is.
Well, I think I can speak on behalf of almost everyone watching when I say that your music is that for us too.
Oh, good.
You know, it is part of my spirituality. It is part of my therapy. It is my part of my prayer when I don't know what to pray.
Yeah, good.
Right. And so, you know, that's why I think so many of us think of you as not only a musician, but a bit of a spiritual mentor, because your music has been with us on the journey.
Right.
Right. And so I think that's why this song will speak to so many, because this is a stop on the journey.
Yep.
That most of us have or will go through.
Or are going to go through.
Right.
Yeah.
Before we play the song, there's something very special that happens at the beginning of the song that I would love for you to describe and explain.
Okay. When you hear the song opens, you're going to hear a bell ting, and then you're going to hear a shaker. You go ting, tick, 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 tick. Well, the ting, when my dad died, my daughter-in-law, Diana Pops, who's an art jeweler, literally the next day, she presented me with a little silver bowl, and it's beautiful. It's like a little thimble bowl, and there's like leaves falling in it. It's really quite gorgeous. And it's a lacrimatory. And a lacrimatory is a vessel to hold your tears, to catch your tears.
Oh my goodness.
Traditionally, it'd be a vase or a little vial. This one is, and she gave this to me, and I kept it in my pocket for about 9 months afterward.
It came in handy.
Yeah. And then one day, I remember, I don't know why I thought about this. Oh, I know what it is. I had it, and I put it down, and it hit up against a cup or something, and it made this most beautiful ting. Not like a dull sound, like it sang, and I went, oh my goodness! And I remember putting in the palm of my hand, and I got a metal fork, and I just tapped it, and it just rang out. So that's the ting that you hear, is that lacrimatory singing, the singing bowl.
Love it.
And the shaker is actually a little urn of my dad's ashes. And you know, so he was cremated, and I didn't even know this was a thing. But you can get the urn for the ashes, but you can sort of get, 5 or 6 little ones if you want a bit of them to keep.
Right.
And at first I thought, well, that's really, really weird. and then I thought maybe not. And so I asked for one. And so I have one in my office, and it's next to some other things with my dad. And again, I picked it up one day just to kind of hold it in my hand, and I heard this and that's the sound of my dad now.
Yes.
That's the only thing I got left.
Wow.
And I went, oh my goodness, and I started to shake it. And now, as a musician, and when you produce music, you're always looking for the thing that gives you the perfect sound you want. And I thought, that's a really nice shaker sound.
You know your dad would love that, right?
Yeah, I know. So that's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear ping, shik, shik, shik. Well, the ping is the bowl to catch the tears. And the shaker actually is my father.
Well, let's listen for that. This is In Memoriam.
Fresh tenderness is burdened with the dying of my dad, and I love him all the more for it. He lived his life for others' gain, his death he gave away the same, and I love him all the more for it. This son was fiercely fashioned by his father's dappled life, the way he loved his children and the way he loved his wife. But Dad was hardly perfect, and I hardly give a rip. I loved him all the more for it. Not scandalized by brokenness, not scandalized by pain, but Dad could not abide the curse and hellishness of shame. He'd absorb another's failures and return them as a gift. We loved him all the more for it. My father was a trumpeter, those days have long since passed. He passed along his passion to me, eager as I was. We'd sit for hours and listen to the Tijuana brass. Loved him all the more for it. I tenderly was never spent. He told me pain would linger and would likely leave a dent. I loved him all the more for it. My dad was a believer, he believed that God is good. He was certain Jesus lived to show how everybody could, and that all our earthly sorrows couldn't be the final writ. We loved him all the more for it. My father was a fortress for my two sisters and I, but more so for our mom, who suffered so much of her life. He taught us how to live, and then he taught us how to die. We loved him all the more for it. Fresh tenderness is burgeoned with the dying of my dad. I loved him all the more for it.
So that was In Memoriam off of Steve Bell's latest CD, Wouldn't You Love to Know? And that concludes the first half of our conversation with Steve about the new album. I'm Amber Anderson. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you catch us for the next program.